In this day and age, building things with code is often commonplace. We're often automating the things that we do. We're making it easier to be able to manage our infrastructures, whether that be on-prem or whether it be in the cloud in Microsoft Azure. I'm Michael Bender. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and today we're going to be talking about using PowerShell in the cloud with Azure Cloud Shell. So, what is Azure Cloud Shell? So what is Azure Cloud Shell? So Azure Cloud Shell is a browser-accessible command line interface that you can use to manage your Azure resource. What's great about it is authenticated and secure access. So you need to authenticate it with an account that can use resources inside of Azure. We can use Bash or PowerShell. So no matter which language you like to work with, both of them are available for use. Like we said, it's private, it's secure, and we have multiple points of entry. You can use an app, the Azure app on iOS. We see here we can use Bash and PowerShell. You can use it through the Azure Portal and also through azure.shell.com. So let's go ahead and jump into our demo where we're going to be exploring the shell with Azure Cloud Shell. To access Azure Cloud Shell, there's a number of different ways that we can do it. The first way, we can go into the Azure portal. I can click on Cloud Shell, and that'll open up a window within my browser. And see, it says, "Welcome to Azure Cloud Shell," because this is my first time connecting in with this session. I can also go over to shell.azure.com and perform the same task. I choose my subscription. When it goes in, it's going to give me the same window. So I'm going to choose PowerShell. Then I'm going to choose the subscription that I'm going to work with. I'm going to choose my personal subscription. I'm going to go to the advanced settings, because what the advanced settings allows me to do is it allows me to choose, do I want to use an existing resource or create a resource group? Do I want to use an existing storage account or create a storage account? If this is your first time, you're going to create a new storage account, a new file share, and probably a new resource group. For me, I'm going to go in and I'm going to use an existing resource group. And then I'm also going to use an existing file share. And then I'm going to go to, and I'm going to choose an existing file share. So I'll put the name of my existing file share. I'll click Attach Storage. And now it's going through, it's created my cloud drive. It's initializing my account for a Cloud Shell. And this takes a few moments to get all running up. Basically, what's happening is it's requesting a shell for me to use, and that is a Linux container that's running in Azure that when you go to access Azure Cloud Shell, it spins that up, and it connects it to your storage, and then you're good to go. So once we're finished authenticating, then we'll be able to go in and actually start using Azure Cloud Shell. So before we jump into there, I want to show you a couple of different things. So if we go to the drop down here, notice I can choose PowerShell or Bash. I'm going to work with PowerShell, but if you wanted to go and use Bash, you could initialize that, and that'll spin up a brand new container for you. If you want to restart your session, you can do that through Restart. If you have questions or want to work with the settings, such as the text size or the font size, we're going to change the font size to medium here. If I want to upload or download files, I can do that through here. I can also manage my file share, and that'll open up the portal for me. If I want to open up a brand new session, I can. I can also open up an editor to use. So I can use the code editor in here. So as you can see, when you're logged in here, it's going to show you a couple things. You can see that if you want to use Azure CLI, you can type in AZ for the commands there. If you need help, just like you do in PowerShell, you can simply type help, and it'll give you help for Cloud Shell. It'll also, every time you log in, it'll give you a suggestion of what to do. So this tells you how to save persistent files across all of your sessions by putting those into Cloud Drive inside your home session. Next, we're going to take a look at finding commands in PowerShell and Azure Cloud Shell. Now let's take a look at finding different commands in Cloud Shell. So first we're going to take a look at the built-in utilities. So I'm going to do get-command and look for the PS Cloud Shell utility. And that'll bring back all of the commands that are built-in utilities inside of Cloud Shell. So there's things for remoting, for enter virtual machines, and a number of informational commands. So let's use one of those informational commands. When I type in get-az command, what that's going to do is that's going to bring back a whole huge list of all of the commands that are available for me to work within Azure Cloud Shell. So they're all of the Azure commands that are available to work with my resources for things like storage, network, compute, SQL, bunch of different things. Let's say you need to work with Azure AD. We have you covered there as well. So if I do get-command and I wildcard Azure AD, what that's going to bring back for me is it's going to bring back a huge list of all of the Azure AD commands that are available for you to use to manage your Azure AD resources. So even though that's in preview, it's still available for you to use. So let's take a look at one of those commands, a get-az-VM. So if I take a look at the help for get-az-VM, it's going to open up the help just like I would see in PowerShell, and I can skip through this. I can see all of the different parameters. It's going to give me some examples of how to use this, all of the same built-in help. So once I get to the end, notice it's going to say Q to quit. So if I do Q, it brings me back out to that window. So that Q is very important because we don't have that on-premises PowerShell. So let's explore that command a little bit more. Let's do a get-az-VM, and that'll pull the Azure virtual machines for me. So I see I have 4 virtual machines available. Let's say I want to see what virtual machines are available in a specific resource group. In this case, the Azure Cloud Shell Demo resource group. I simply use the resource group name parameter. I can also search based on wildcard for the name for a VM. So let's look for the VMs that have Linux in the name. You see it brings back 2 Linux virtual machines for me. And then if I want to dive into one of those specific VMs, I can simply call it straight out by its name. I'll put it into a format -list, and it gives me the listing of all of the properties that are available for that. And that's just a little bit of working with finding commands. Now let's take a look at Azure Drive. So what Azure Drive is Azure Drive is a way for us to be able to view our resources in Azure in a file system structure. So it uses ships for that, or show hierarchy in PowerShell, which allows us to be able to see different things that aren't based on a file structure in a file structure format. So if we do a directory listing here, we see that it brings up all of the subscriptions, and now I can drill down into those subscriptions. So I'm going to drill down into my personal subscription, and then I can do a change directory. I can go into the virtual machines underneath of there, and you'll see it will list for me, when I do a directory listing, all of the virtual machines that I have available inside my subscription. And then I can do a get-az-VM, and I can call the virtual machine name directly. And notice I don't have to put in the resource group because I am literally in that directory. So it knows that it's looking for the resources inside of that directory. So it brings up that virtual machine for me. And then if I want to get back to the Azure directory, I can simply CD and go back to that directory. So that's a great way to explore through your subscription in Azure using the command line. So next, we're going to take a look at the Azure Cloud Shell persistent storage. So if we take a look at let's take a look at the persistent storage that's available within Azure Cloud Shell. So the first thing I want to take a look at is to see what our home directory is for Azure Cloud Shell. So if we put in the home variable, we see that it's /home/Michael. And if I want to change directory to that, even though I'm in that same directory, I can CD to that location. Now, if I actually want to work within there, I can do a git dash command. And if I want to see what commands I can use with Cloud Drive, I can put in the git dash command and search for that. So you can see you can dismount your drive, you can get the Cloud Drive information, and I'm going to do a git dash Cloud Drive to see what that brings up. So that brings up all the information about our Cloud Drive. So if you need to, say, refresh yourself as far as what storage account and resource group your Cloud Drive is in, this is an easy way to find that piece of information. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to explore that directory. So if I do a directory inside of there, you'll see that it brings up a folder called Cloud Drive. I'm going to go inside that folder, and then inside there, if I do a make dir, it allows me to create a demo directory. And then if I do a cd into that, it allows me to cd into that directory. If we look inside there, we see that there's nothing available inside. Now that we've shown you how to work with these directories, let's actually add some files into our Cloud Shell Cloud Drive. So the easiest way to do that is go up to the taskbar here and choose Upload and Download Files. If I upload and download, that'll actually put those files in the root, and then I need to copy them over into the directory that I want them in. So currently the easiest way to actually put it into the directory you want is to go to Manage the File Share, which will open up your Azure Portal and go into your storage account, or I already have the Azure Portal open into my storage account. So if I go into the storage account that has my Cloud Drive, and once that resolves, I'm going to go into Files. You see there's my file share that I created. Notice I have my demo directory, my scripts directory. If I go into demo directory, I choose Upload, and that will allow me to go into File Explorer locally. And let's just say I want to grab a few of these scripts to upload. I can hit the Control key and choose Multiple, choose Open, choose Upload, and we see those have uploaded. Now, if we go back over to Azure Cloud Shell, if I put a directory listing is, there you go. You see all those files. And that's a little bit for doing an initial configuration and working within Azure Cloud Shell. So in our next demo, we're going to take a look at tools that we have available for you to use in Cloud Shell and also integration with VS Code. Now let's take a look at some of the editors that are available inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So we do a git dash command and we look for VI, Nano, and Emacs. We see that all of those editors are available for us to work with. We can also use a stripped down version of code based on the Monaco editor inside of Cloud Shell. So let's go into our directory. So I'm going to go into my Cloud Drive, and then I'm going to go into my scripts folder. And if I want to take a look at and work with a script that's inside of my Cloud Drive, I can simply type in code and the name of the script that I want to work with, and it opens up that script inside of Azure Cloud Drive. And then I can simply go into the editor, put in this is a change. I can go up here, I can save, I can quit out of my editor, and now that script has been modified. So it's quick and easy for you to be able to edit, modify scripts that you have inside of Cloud Drive. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is, let's go through the process and take a look at some of the tools that are available inside of Cloud Shell. So if I do a get dash module and use the list available parameter, it lists all of the available modules that are available inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So we see a ton of modules that are available. So let's say I want to find the modules that are available for SQL Server. So put in find module, look for SQL or SQL, depending on how you want to go about that. And notice it brings up a bunch of different modules that are available, many of them being in the PowerShell gallery. So if I want to install and use one of these modules, I can simply do an install module. In this case, I'm going to add in the PS teaching tools. And then I'm going to import that module in so that it's available. And the great thing about going through this is now these are going to be resident in Cloud Shell and always available for me when I go in. So that's another great reason for using Cloud Shell is your tools are going to be available and always installed for you. So to verify that install, I'm going to simply use a get dash command to look at the module. We see that all of my commands are available from the PS teaching tools. So that's quick and easy for you to explore and install some of the tools. And if we go out to docs on Microsoft.com, there's a great features and tools page that shows you all of the tools and languages that are supported with Azure Cloud Shell. So as you can see when we get down there, there's a number of Linux and Azure tools, the text editors as we saw, and then it works with a number of the popular containers like Docker, Kubernetes, you can use Helm, and it also works with configuration management and an infrastructure as code tools such as Terraform and Ansible. So in our next demo, we're going to take a look at tools that we have available for you to use in Cloud Shell and also integration with VS Code. Now let's take a look at some of the editors that are available inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So we do a get dash command and we look for VI, Nano, and Emacs. We see that all of those editors are available for us to work with. We can also use a stripped down version of code based on the Monaco editor inside of Cloud Shell. So let's go into our directory. So I'm going to go into my cloud drive, and then I'm going to go into my scripts folder. And if I want to take a look at and work with a script that's inside of my cloud drive, I can simply type in code and the name of the script that I want to work with, and it opens up that script inside of Azure Cloud Drive. And then I can simply go into the editor, put in this is a change. I can go up here. I can save. I can quit out of my editor. And now that script has been modified. So it's quick and easy for you to be able to edit, modify scripts that you have inside of Cloud Drive. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is let's go through the process and take a look at some of the tools that are available inside of Cloud Shell. So if I do a get dash module and use the list available parameter, it lists all of the available modules that are available inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So we see a ton of modules that are available. So let's say I want to find the modules that are available for SQL Server. So put in find module, look for SQL, or SQL, depending on how you want to go about that. And notice it brings up a bunch of different modules that are available, many of them being in the PowerShell gallery. So if I want to install and use one of these modules, I can simply do an install module. In this case, I'm going to add in the PS teaching tools. And then I'm going to import that module in so that it's available. And the great thing about going through this is now these are going to be resident in Cloud Shell and always available for me when I go in. So that's another great reason for using Cloud Shell is your tools are going to be available and always installed for you. So to verify that install, I'm going to simply use a get dash command to look at the module. We see that all of my commands are available from the PS teaching tools. So that's quick and easy for you to explore and install some of the tools. And if we go out to docs on Microsoft.com, there's a great features and tools page that shows you all of the tools and languages that are supported with Azure Cloud Shell. So as you can see when we get down there, there's a number of Linux and Azure tools, the text editors as we saw, and then it works with a number of the popular containers like Docker, Kubernetes, you can use Helm, and it also works with configuration management and an infrastructure as code tools such as Terraform and Ansible. Now let's take a look at important extensions to have in Visual Studio Code when working with Azure Cloud Shell. So the first extension, we have the extension sidebar open here, is to add in the Azure account. So we simply search Azure account from the marketplace. And when I click on that, we see that what the Azure account extension does is it allows us to be able to sign into our subscription, and it gives us a number of different commands like Open Bash and Cloud Shell, and open PowerShell and Cloud Shell. So it gives us an easy way to securely access our resources in Azure. The next extension is the PowerShell extension. So this is an extension built by the PowerShell team at Microsoft, and basically it brings in many of the key features that you find in tools like the ISE into Visual Studio Code. So you have the ability to use that with your PowerShell language. So it gives you a lot of support when you're working with PowerShell. So now let's take a look at using Azure Account. So when I do a Control-Shift-B from the command palette, I chose Open PowerShell and Cloud Shell. At this point, what it's doing is it's going through the process of requesting my shell. So if I scroll up here, you see it's requesting my shell. Once that request goes through, then I'll be able to run code inside of Azure Cloud Shell. Now that we're connected in, let's go ahead and just do a simple directory listing. So if I do a dir, you see that it accesses Azure Drive and shows me all of my subscriptions. Now I'll go to a PowerShell script that I have. Locally, I simply run selected text. It puts it right into the terminal and it allows me to run. So this is a quick and easy way to be able to take code that I've built locally and to be able to run it up inside of Azure. So those are two great extensions that you should be using if you're using Visual Studio Code with Azure Cloud Shell. Now let's take a look at remote VM management inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So the first thing, let's take a look at just to see what commands are available for us to run inside of Azure Cloud Shell. We see that there's a disable-azvm ps remoting and an enable, the ability to enter AZVMs and invoke an AZVM command. So the enable and disable allow us to turn on and off the ability to do PS remoting into our virtual machines, and the other two allow us to actually do the remote management. So we want to start walking through the process for enabling PS remoting through Azure Cloud Shell. So I'm just going to create some variables here that are going to be used in my commands to save some typing. So I've got a variable for my Windows and my Linux virtual machines. I'm creating a resource group. And then I'm going to create a variable for my credential. So we'll go ahead and put in our credential so that's stored securely for us. And now we'll go and enable VMPS remoting on our Windows machine. Notice that it gives us the option for putting in the OS type, which is Windows, and the protocol, which is HTTPS. So these are important when you're choosing these. The reason for that is that what this command is doing is it's doing a number of different things. First, it's going to take a look at the network security groups, verify that there is one there. If not, it'll create it. And then it opens up the necessary ports to do WinRM or Windows Remote Management into that Windows VM. Then it's going to verify that WinRM is set to run on that remote machine so that you can connect in. Because it's doing a number of different things, you can imagine it's going to take a bit of time for all of this to roll through. Once that's completed, we're going to do the exact same thing for the Linux virtual machine. And notice we'll choose the protocol of SSH and the OS type of Linux. So very much like the one for Windows, what this is going to do is it's going to modify the network security group for SSH to go through that Linux VM. It's also going to make sure that SSH is configured on that virtual machine, and it's going to install PowerShell core on that remote system as well, so that we can remotely manage that system with PowerShell core. Again, this is going to take a few moments to run through. Now that both of those are complete, we can actually start managing some of these remote VMs. So first I'm going to use invoke-azvm command, and I'm going to run the script block of get-service to get the Windows services on that remote system. So invoke-azvm command works just like invoke-command in PowerShell, in that it's going to allow you to run script blocks against that remote system and bring the output back to you. As you can see, that brings back all of the information. I can also do that against the Linux virtual machine as well, and simply doing a uname to bring back the information. Notice that I'm putting in the username for that VM. It's also the key to my public key. I'll put in my password that I use to secure my SSH configuration. After a couple moments, it'll bring back all of the information about that. So that command ran against those Linux machines. So that's a great way to be able to run commands and bring those back for us. Now let's say I want to just do an ad hoc command. I can use enter-azvm, just like I'd use enter-ps session on a local system. So when I run that, after a couple moments, it will connect into that Windows virtual machine. So as you can notice here, you can see that it tells us that it's connected into vmwin01.westus2.cloudapp.azure.com, the fully qualified domain name. So I know that I'm on that remote system. If I do a who am I, it tells me who I'm logged in as. And then I could do that same command, get-Windows service. And it shows me all of those Windows services. I can type in exit, and that exits me right out of there. And so that's how we would go through and do our remote management. So one of the things that you want to do if you're using the enable-azvm-ps remoting is it does open up ports that you might not want to have open, because all of these VMs, in order to use this right now, are using your public IP addresses. So what you want to do is you want to disable the AM/VM/PS remoting on both of those virtual machines that we worked with. Now that it's done for the Windows, I'm going to go ahead and do that for the Linux virtual machine as well. And based ports in the network security groups, it'll remove any of the things that they installed, such as PowerShell Core, and also WinRM, turn that off on the Windows system. Once that's complete, we're going to go ahead and try to run that command that we did before, the enter-azvm. So when we go ahead and we run that, what we'll see is we will get an error because we're unable to get connected in there because that remoting is enabled. So that's how you go about remoting and managing virtual machines through Azure Cloud Shell. The next thing we're going to take a look at is we're going to show you how to deploy virtual machines in Azure Cloud Shell using an ARM template that's stored on a GitHub website. In this demo, I'm going to show you a couple different things. I'm going to show you how to build infrastructure as code using Terraform and how to do it from a document at docs.microsoft.com. So here I have the create a Terraform configuration from Azure Doc. I'm going to click try it, and that's going to launch me into an Azure Cloud Shell. So when I log in with my subscription, it's going to connect Azure Cloud Shell to my subscription up in Azure. So now I'll be able to run through this document. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up code so that I can copy over my Terraform configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my Terraform configuration. I'm going to paste it into code. And then once I've pasted that into there, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Give it a name. I'm going to call it main.tf. So Terraform will know that's the configuration. And then I'll close out code. And then I'll go to the next step, which is going to be initializing my Terraform configuration and verifying it. So I'm going to copy the code there. I'm going to go ahead and paste that into my Azure Cloud Shell. We'll go ahead and run that. Once that's done running, then I can go through the plan phase where Terraform goes through to validate the configuration that it's properly formatted. So I've initialized Terraform, and now I'm going to verify that the plan is valid. So we'll copy in our Terraform plan, and that'll push that to an out file. And then once I've done that, what I can do is I can do a Terraform apply, which will apply the configuration inside my infrastructure. So we'll go ahead and paste that, and that's going to go ahead and run. And this is going to take a while to run because what it's doing is it's going and it's deploying a container instance. It's deploying a Cosmos DB instance. It's deploying a number of resources. So this one takes about 9 minutes. So we're going to speed up a little bit to the end of that. So once this is done, what we actually want to do is we want to actually update. So we see that we added 3 resources into Azure. So now I'm going to update my configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy my code that I had, and then I'm going to open up my code instance for main.tf. So we'll type in code.main.tf, main.tf, and that'll open that up in code. And then I'm going to simply copy the rest of the code to the end of this Terraform file. We'll go ahead and save that. And then we'll go through the same phase of validating the plan by doing the Terraform plan. And that'll validate my plan with those new changes that I've just added in there. We'll close the editor. And that verified. And then I'll copy in the Terraform apply again. And what this is going to do is this is going to apply those new changes to that all those resources. So it's going to build out a number of other resources. And basically what we're doing is we're putting creating a voting mechanism that's web-based. So it's a web-based application that's running in a container that's connected to a Cosmos DB instance. So again, that's going to take a while for that to finish up. And so now we're going to verify that it actually works. So I'm going to take the fully qualified domain name. I'm going to put that into my browser. We'll go ahead and browse out to that. And we see, voila, there is our voting app. So we see how quick and easy we can deploy production resources using something like Terraform. So now if I want to get rid of this, I use Terraform destroy to get rid of all of my resources. So it will basically go through and remove all of the resources we just applied. So just like it takes a while for resources to get built out, it's going to take a while for resources to be destroyed. So that's how you would use infrastructure as code in a tool like Terraform to build out resources quickly in Azure through Azure Cloud Shell. So now let's take a look at another way that we can use Azure Cloud Shell. So inside of docs.microsoft.com, we have the Try It button. So what the Try It button allows us to do is it allows us to be able to try the code that we're seeing in docs.microsoft.com and run it in Azure Cloud Shell. So when I click Try It, it's going to go through the process for signing in. So I choose my Azure account, and so it's going to make a connection into an Azure Cloud Shell instance that now I can take the commands that I'm seeing in Docs and run those over in my Cloud Shell. So this is a great way to be able to run through different code. So I'm going to simply copy get-date here. I'm going to paste it in. The only reason I'm not copying everything is because it would actually copy everything. And this documentation actually has the output as well. So you'd end up getting an error. So we see we're able to run that code. Now I can also freelance code as well. So I simply typed in get-azvm. So this allows me to work with whatever is in my Cloud Shell subscription. So really a cool way to use Azure Cloud Shell while you're learning how to use the different commands that you're seeing inside of Docs. Now, another way that we can use it is through Microsoft Learn. So I'm in a Learn module here. I'm going in and I'm taking a look at an exercise on creating and saving scripts in Azure PowerShell. So what I did is I activated a sandbox. So Microsoft's built sandboxes that you can use inside of Learn. And notice the sandbox is active for 59 minutes. And this sandbox creates a virtual environment in the background. You don't have to have a subscription for this. So this is subscription free, no credit card, no what have you. You only have to be logged in with a Microsoft account into Learn. And then it creates this sandboxed environment for you. And then what you can do is you can simply go through all of these exercises. I can copy the code from over here. I can paste that code into my Azure Cloud Shell and it runs through those. So it gives me a way to run through exercises that are in Learn and to be able to practice that code. So this is another great way for you to use Azure Cloud Shell as you're learning how to work with resources in Azure. I can also type in, notice we do a directory listing. I can do a get-azvm as well. And those are running against this subscription. It doesn't have any virtual machines, so it's not going to show anything in here. If I do a get-azure resource group, it'll show me the resource group that's currently being used for this subscription. So as you can see, you can do the code that's listed in the Learn module, and you can also add your own code in as well. And the last thing we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at how we can access Azure Cloud Shell through the Microsoft Azure app for iOS and Android. So we click the Cloud Shell icon within the app, and notice it brings up our PowerShell Cloud Shell environment. If you want to, you can use Bash as well. You could switch over to that. We can put in a directory listing. So if we want to see all of the subscriptions we have available, there we go. If we want to see all of the virtual machines, we can use our PowerShell commandlets for that as well. I put in get-azvm. I'm going to put that into a format table to give me a nice table listing of that. Once that runs, we'll see all of the VMs that are available in my subscription. Now let's say we want to go over and see our cloud drive. We can change directory. We can go to our home directory. Once we're over there, we do a directory listing, and we'll see that we have all of the same files that we had available when we worked in Azure Cloud Shell. So another great way to work with Azure Cloud Shell and manage your Azure resources. And that about covers it for our session today on Azure Cloud Shell to access resources and work with resources in Microsoft Azure. So we covered how to set up Azure Cloud Shell to access a resource and do the initial configuration. Along with that, we showed you how to search for tools within the console, both PowerShell and also the built-in commands. We showed you the integration with Visual Studio Code and how we can use that with Azure Cloud Shell. Showed you how to do remote management for your Azure VMs. And we also walked you through how to deploy resources from source control in Azure. And then we finished up showing you different places to use Azure Cloud Shell, like docs.microsoft.com and the Microsoft Azure app. So for resources for this session, you can check out the Azure Cloud Shell docs through the link that I have here. Along with that, I created a GitHub repository that'll have a link to all demo videos with a talk track and all the demo code and instructions. You can get it from this link here. If you have any questions or comments about this session, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Michael Bender. I will also post a link for both of these out there in case you didn't get time to write them down during this session. So with that, I want to thank you for coming out today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Azure Online Global Bootcamp 2019.